How do you get into the real estate market in Toronto with such high prices? Bank of Mama and Papa. Stats Canada just came out with some latest numbers talking about how much help parents actually give first-time homebuyers, and it's a little bit jarring, and this is exactly what we'll be reviewing and reacting to on this week's episode of Prime Properties TV. Now, if you are looking for some help on how to navigate this real estate market, whether you're buying or selling, because it is, like I said many times in the last few weeks, weird, right? Turbulent, unpredictable, depending on what you're trying to do, right? And if you want to kind of talk about your plan and strategy for what you want to do in 2024, and if it's actually reasonable or feasible, if it makes sense, you could book a call with me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zhen, and if you're enjoying the content I'm putting out there, do me a solid and like and subscribe. So the article we're reviewing here is a key source of funds for Toronto homeowners. Bank of Mom and Dad helps you break into the real estate. And this study is from Stats Can. So the first snippet we have here is more than a quarter of Toronto homes owned by adults born in the 1990s are co-owned by their parents. So let's define a 1990s baby. If you're born in 1990 right now, you would be effectively 34. And the average age of a first-time homebuyer in Canada is 36. So we're now basically talking about millennials who are buying their first home. And do they have help from parents? 100%. They most likely do. So they see that Toronto's 27.2% co-ownership rate went right past the 17.3% across Canadian cities, meaning there's likely 10% more that the first-time homebuyer had help from their parents, which is effectively every 3 out of 10 homes, right? So like 30%, give or take, is owned by a parent and their child. And the kid lives in it on their own, meaning that the parent was on title to help. Now, I want you to keep in mind, jointly owned just means that the parents help qualify for the mortgage. And then on this information, can you realistically track whether the parents gave money for a down payment? And this is where I would say, from my experience in working with first-time home buyers, more than half, I would say, have had some kind of help by their parents in some way, shape, or form. And it's actually very common in the Chinese culture, like the Asian culture, to do that as well, right? Like this was even way before real estate prices were expensive. Now, the data estimates that links between parents who own higher value residential properties and the value of their kid's home with the grown child's home valued 30 to 37% higher than their peers. Well, I mean, that's kind of a given, right? Like if you're gifted an amount of money, a certain amount, a lot of the people I talk to who do have that help says they want to buy a home that's going to last them for a long time. And so by that metric, because they're looking way past just the entry level property, call it a condo, they can get into like a larger condo or even get into a real town. Their properties inherently will be worth more, right? So that's also, I think, very obvious. Now, I think systematically we have problems is right here, where it says this ripple effect will just widen inequality between those who have that opportunity to buy and those who don't. And while I don't necessarily agree with the fact that you should be able to pass on, some generational wealth transfer to your kids, because that's going to happen because the baby boomers are retiring. They're the richest generation of all, and the millennials are the second largest population after the boomers, right? So that wealth transfer is going to happen. Where I think I have a challenge with is that the Canadian dream and the American dream is that you own your own home and, you could create for yourself, almost like a form of like free market capitalism. And I think right now, because of how expensive prices are, like home prices, that dream is kind of dying / dead unless you're effectively in like the top 5% income bracket, right? So like the top 5% income bracket, you're looking at like 200,000 plus. This is so low. Now, obviously the numbers change if you're, buying a place together with your significant other, but at the moment right now, like unless you're honestly like, a developer, someone in sales making like $200,000 plus, it's very hard to get into the market on your own. It's not that it's not possible, it's just very hard, right? So across Canada, co-ownership is especially prevalent among immigrant families that the data shows. So I can put some more color to this. I don't think this is a very enlightening piece of information, because I'll tell you, like from our clients, the Asian community and the South Asian community, it's normal to live with your parents and call it grandkids, right? So like 3 generations, it's very normal. What generally happens in at least Asian culture, and I've talked about this before, is we are passive aggressively told to take our parents in because they don't want to be in retirement homes. So they live with the kids when the kids are of age, call it around like 30, 35. And it's actually very beneficial as well because the grandparent also serves as a way of daycare for these millennial kids, or millennial parents now that have kids. So it's a very nice symbiotic relationship where the boomer generation stays home and watches whatever the kid generation now is. I think it's like Gen Z or something. And the millennial parent can go to work. So now you have effectively double working income for young professionals for that millennial generation. The boomer has passed down some wealth. They're also retired. They get to stay in with the family and watch their grandkids. That's effectively the Asian, nuclear family. That's how it works, right? So to say that it's prevalent among immigrant families and these numbers are going up, it's been our culture for millennia. I don't know. So this is normal, right? This is like when in China, this is how it is, right? Like I was raised by my grandparents as well. And my family back in China is still 3 generations, right? And I've said this before, it's 3 bedrooms between 5 people, 3 generations. This is all totally normal. So when people are saying, how do people buy these $2 million homes? It's 3 generations of money pooled together. Very, very common. So this chart is interesting here because it basically shows you that the parent co-ownership rate, the higher the number is, obviously the more likely it's going to happen, and how expensive the price is. And you can see basically Vancouver and Toronto are very, very high, right? And surprisingly, some of the places around GTA are pretty high too, like Guelph and Barrie around here. So this is not uncommon. Again, like I said, this is very, very common because one of the motivators, I would say, when talking to our clients about whether you should be passing money on to your kids to buy something, right? And there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, but a lot of it has to do with that. Hey, if you don't do it, your kid can't afford a home and you kind of want them out of the house, but at the same time, you don't want them too far in case you want to go see them or in case you want to see the grandkids. So a lot of the times it's like, hey, we're going to be retiring anyways. And if somebody passes, there's an inheritance. Why not take some early inheritance and help the kids out so they buy a home? And that's kind of what I'm seeing a lot right now. So if this process was starting way, way, way earlier, the parents may have helped with the first home 5-7 years ago, call it a condo for like $300,000-$400,000. Now, maybe the parent injects some cash and they buy a larger home, right? Like a freehold home, call it like the 1.1.2, right? And if you're of the more affluent class, then it's basically you find that home, whatever the kid qualifies for, and then the parent subsidizes the rest of it, right? And that's kind of what I'm seeing right now with our clients who are on the buying side. And I think that's going to continue, right? It's just very unfortunate right now because the inequality will keep getting bigger. And we have like a Canadian zeitgeist where owning is the only way to go and renting is a waste of money. And until that changes, there's always going to be resentment for those who cannot own because of whether parents or just the affordability to those who have owned and they're just born into like a better circumstance, which you cannot control, which is ultimately just luck, right? So I think that's going to be a very big rift in society in the future, which is unfortunate because I don't think prices are going to get any cheaper, unless we actually build more. But the problem with that is nobody wants to hear, hey, for affordable housing, we need prices to come down. I've never heard a politician talk about prices coming down. They always talk about weird creative financing ways to get first-time homeowners into the market. I mean, unless wages catch up and prices stay flat in real estate, I don't think that's going to be happening, right? No matter how creative you get. So that's why I think this inequality is going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So these results suggest that parental property ownership affects not only children's ability to access home ownership as adults, but also the value of the properties they own and therefore their ability to build up greater home equity and financial assets. The unfortunate thing is that's true. You see that in a lot of European cities. You see that in a lot of Asian places where real estate is just passed on generation through generation through generation, right? Like my family has a plot of like rice land that's not worth anything that is been passed on from generation to generation to generation. So that's kind of the norm, I would imagine. Now, it was only underscored many Canadians' view of their homes not only as roof over the head, but as a vehicle for growing wealth. And that's kind of the problem, right? if we always keep thinking that real estate prices go up and it's a way of creating wealth, then everyone's going to want to keep having the idea of homeownership is the best thing ever, which is going to propagate higher prices unless we build more and people can't get in with the type of immigration that comes through. And the challenge with all of this is that the tax system kind of incentivizes that too, because if you think about it, there's only a few ways you can make money tax-free, and plowing it into your primary residence is legitimately one of the things that works very, very well, right? Like if you bought a home for $300,000 and you sold it for $1 million, you made $700,000 tax-free. Assuming you were at the highest tax bracket, you would have to make $1.4 million gross. Just think about it, right? So of course it makes sense, because the tax system incentivizes that as well. So unless some things change in that sense, I don't think it's going to change, right? Now, it's an asset that can be leveraged in various ways and passed down through generations. So I've talked about this before. Leverage in the sense that because the debt on it will over time, get smaller and smaller, and the asset increases in price, you can always borrow against that asset, right? And that's what they mean by leverage it. Like when you pass money on to your kids, and what I'm seeing with most of our clients who are like, of the, call it older descent, who have some assets, they're not selling these homes. They're basically just like have paid off homes, and they use their current income to refinance that home, to take some money out of it, and they buy the property with the kids. So they're now basically, passing on some of that equity to the kids without having to sell it. And that's just the norm. It's just unfortunate because the system is set up in such a way that if you own assets, you have more options. And that's why everyone wants to get on the asset ladder. And that's what I'm saying. Owning your home makes a lot of sense, despite, rent being better than owning right now because of rent's cheaper than mortgage, maintenance fees, taxes, all that stuff. There are values to having paid off assets in the future, and you just got to start early. That's essentially it, right? So do I agree with where things are going? Not all the time, but it's just unfortunately, I don't see this changing because the system is just set up that way. So, I think it's not great that it's happening. Is it going to cause some kind of, unrest? Probably. But, if the economy is a little bit better and wages do catch up, it may help offset some of this kind of tension in the, call it, society right now with home ownership and the inequality of it. But yeah, I don't want to overtouch too much on this topic because I feel like it's going to get political. But anyways, I will end it there for now. And if you are looking for some help on how to navigate this real estate market, and if you are kind of parent that wants to kind of find effective ways to do a generational pass-through of your equity so that your kids can buy a home in the area that you live in, yeah, we have tons of clients that do that, and we can show you the most optimal way to do it. You can just book a call with me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. So yeah, now that you're done watching this one, how about this one or this one? You know what? Just watch them both.